how do you look at the current Republican Party and in particular Donald Trump and kind of grade him on those characteristics?
Well, I don't know a lot about politics. It's interesting you said you're interested in my politics after reading the book, because I'm the first one to say I don't know enough about politics to discuss it intelligently.
I'm jealous of that.
I'll fess that up. I think a lot of people that talk about politics don't know enough about it to discuss it intelligently. I'm just willing to admit that. And and I don't say that as a cop-out. I really don't understand all the political inner workings. I certainly don't understand geopolitics. I talk about cultural issues. You know, my background is psychological, and I deal with psychological issues, psychosocial issues. And they say, well, you seem to talk about a lot of political issues. No, I think politicians talk about a lot of cultural issues.
They do, that's true.
And I think that's where the crossover is. But if you ask me about a bill or about a politician or whatever, yeah, I don't really understand what their policies are or what they're proposing. People say, you know, the Republicans killed the bill for the border recently. I don't know what all was in that bill. I know every bill that I see has some marketing title on it, and I don't like that. When I do look at the bills, like the Inflation Reduction Act, I did read that bill. It didn't seem to have much to do with reducing inflation, and I read a lot of people that do understand it that said it wouldn't, and apparently it didn't. But how do you know what you're reading? I mean,
well, I mean, look, you don't have to be a genius in politics or a policy wonk to have your own personal thoughts or views on specific politicians, especially dominant politicians like Donald Trump, right? And so, okay, let me just do it this way. Let's talk about Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. When you look at the two different candidates and you think about your personal values, the values that you wrote about in your book, do either one of those candidates stand out to you as living up to those values?
Well, I think you have to be more specific and look at what it is you're talking about. Here's what I think. I think this country was built on a meritocracy. You know, the name of my new network is Merit Street Media, Merit TV. I didn't choose that by accident. I think merit is very important. I think added value, talent, hard work, I think is really important. And I think that if we have too much of entitlement programs, if we give people too much instead of them working to earn it, I think we cheat them out of an opportunity to observe themselves mastering their environment, overcoming obstacles, and we cheat them out of self-esteem. And I think both parties have done way too much of that. I think government is way too big. And so you can say, you know, the Biden administration has been printing a lot of money. You know, we have a huge deficit, right? But you go back and look at the Trump administration, they printed a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, we need to take the printing press away from both of them. I'm not in love with government, period. When we're in gridlock, when you have a president that's either Democrat or Republican, and the House and Senate are of the other party, I feel a whole lot better, because I think when we're in gridlock, we're a whole lot safer than if we had a Democratic president, House and Senate, or a Republican president, House and Senate. I would get real nervous because you don't have anybody slowing down the roll.
But aren't you worried? I mean, there's so many things that are broken in our country right now. I mean, I think our immigration system is a perfect example of that. If you have gridlock, you're not going to get an immigration proposal passed.
Well, I say I feel safer, but at some point, we talk. I've heard you guys talk about culture wars and that sort of thing. You know, whenever I talk to somebody about things that we disagree on, and I've done that a lot because I work with law enforcement a lot, FBI, state, local, and I've done training with them on negotiation tactics. For example, we have a show on our network called Behavior Panel, and these are experts from Homeland Security and FBI and military that did interrogation and negotiation things. So these are friends of mine, and I always, when I sit down to negotiate with somebody, I always say, well, before we start talking about our differences, let's talk about what we agree on first. Because oftentimes, if you'll sit down with somebody that you have to resolve something with, and you'll say, first, let's make a list of everything we agree on. By the time you get through with that, you find out that you've got a really long list of things that you really do agree on.
True, yep.
And then you have a much shorter list of the things you disagree on, and oftentimes those get reduced down to methodology. Like, you take Democrats and Republicans and independents, libertarians, you take them all, wouldn't everybody agree that we want a strong country, that we want a good climate, that we want to give the next generation a better country than we inherited, that we want more security, more safety, a better economy, all the things, we would agree that we all want those things. And so now we say, well, what's the best way to get there? And I don't have the answers to all those things, but I've got some questions, and it's been said that I would rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question. And if we get in a situation where you're given these answers and you can't raise your hand and question them without being labeled a hater or a phobic or something, that's not a good environment. We need to be able to have good debates and stuff.
Open dialogue, debate. I agree with you on that.
I've seen both of y'all in debates with people that were supposedly on the other side of issues, and both of you have had, I thought, really constructive debates, even though you had decided differences about stuff. But I learned something when I watched both of you do it in different situations, because you were willing to plug in and stay hooked up to it instead of shouting the other person down, which is something that I see. When I went to college, neither of you were born, but when I went to college, you wanted other people to come with different points of view so you could hear, why do they feel that way? And now you have people come and they shout them down, or they try to bar them from campus. They try to keep them from speaking. You need to listen to them.